Hi everyone, I'm Jo Fry and this is my channel Jojo Fry Rocks, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the issue of innovation or lack thereof in today's guitar market. So this is inspired by a video that I saw a few days ago by Six String TV. If you don't know the channel, go and check it out, it's really good. I really love his stuff. So first thing is, I'm not trying to start any online beef here because I really like him. I think he's great. And he makes some really good points, I think, in his video. But there are some things that I would maybe take issue with. So we're going to go over those points in this video today. And I'm going to put forward maybe some counter arguments to the things that he states in his video. So what has he said? The basic gist of it is that he says he's really tired of going to trade shows like NAMM, like Guitar Summit, and all the different things that he goes to, and seeing essentially new guitars which are just really copies of Strats, Tellys and Les Pauls. He says it's every guitar company, from the big ones to the smaller ones to the budget ones, are all just kind of going over to China, getting a bunch of OEM guitar factories over there to churn out Strats and Tellys at a price point and marketing them as new. And he says he's really bored of that. Why can't we have something new? For the love of all things guitar, can we have something different? Really, he's talking about in terms of kind of body shape and pickup configuration. And he uses an example of a guitar that has got more of a unique body shape and a slightly different pickup configuration. And he says, can't we at the very least have more of this? So, being that he is a very good YouTuber, you know, he's very savvy and he knows what he's doing. Basically, he's giving you an easy question to respond to, right? Because I think there are some very easy and straightforward responses to those questions. And a lot of people have commented and said those things. So yeah, it's kind of quite clear why some of this is happening. First reason, demand. Okay? It's quite simple, isn't it? Companies now have access to the most sort of consumer data that they've ever had at any time, at any point in history, right? So they are more able to get insight into kind of what sells best and what doesn't, and all the metrics around it. And when you ask people what they want, it's a bit like Henry Ford said, right? In car design and manufacturing, you ask people what they want, they'll say they want a faster horse. Okay? So in some ways, I'd say that's what we're seeing, you know. People want the traditional, original guitar designs from 70 years ago. They just want them to be good quality, you know, reliable, consistent quality, and at a lower price point. And that's what the consumer, more or less, wants. So to some extent, this is probably one of the factors that is kind of stifling innovation and creative thinking and risk-taking in the industry. I think there's another fairly obvious point to be made in terms of ergonomics and physics when he's talking about body shape, for example. There are only certain types of body shape of an electric guitar that really feel comfortable to play and to hold, and that are well balanced between the body and the neck. And we've seen over the years that, guitar companies have tried to make different body shapes, irregular body shapes, in the name of trying to do something different, trying to do something new. And consumers, guitarists, the guitar buying public usually reject them. Gibson found this out when they brought out the Flying V. In theory, yes, a guitar body can be any shape you want. It doesn't even really need to be a shape at all. It could just be a plank of wood with strings on. And you do see these things, cigar box guitars and things like this, the cricket bat type headless guitars that we've seen before. But these are not optimal in terms of comfort and playability and ergonomics and the physics of how a guitar works and resonates and stuff. So, you have to have somewhere to put the electronics. The controls for the electronics have to be accessible easily and all the rest of it. So a lot of that is kind of determined by the fact that you have a human being at the end of it who has to play it. And those are some of the things that sort of Gibson and Fender really got absolutely spot on. They got that right at the very beginning of this whole game. So there's another reason why we don't have these kind of star-shaped guitars all the time. And we do have some variations and offsets and things, but broadly, if you make a weird-shaped guitar, no one is going to really want it because it's not going to be great to play. Another issue that he has is with pickup configuration. So he says, SSS, HSS, HH, can't we have something different from these? And the guitar that he uses as an example has got 3 humbuckers. Now, I would argue that even that's not particularly innovative, is it? That's not particularly different. That's just sticking another humbucker in the middle of 2 humbuckers. That actually isn't going to give you much greater variety of tone at the end of the day. And I think that what we do have in terms of innovation in pickups are the different types of pickups themselves. And it is really arguable and debatable, and for a different video, how much variation you really get out of different types of pickups anyway. So I don't really think that is a massive consideration in terms of innovation. The innovation was the electric guitar pickup. That was a real game changer. The electric guitar itself built around the idea of having a pickup which amplified the volume and sent it to an amplifier. There are only so many things you can do with that. And I think the innovation is in how that is used in a guitar. And we have come quite a long way. I think, you can do things now like coil splitting and switching where you can almost have any combination of any of the pickups on your guitar using very, very clever switches and tone pots and things that will shape the sound of your guitar, even adding things like piezo pickups as well, where you can make an electric guitar sound like an acoustic guitar. So I actually think that we have done a lot in terms of innovating with pickups. I don't think just having them in a different configuration is particularly innovative in and of itself. Where I think there is perhaps a broader point to be made here about innovation is the general conservatism, I think, of the consumer in today's guitar market. I think that we are looking at a lot of guitar sales being driven really by kind of nostalgia. I think that's a huge factor. I think that in turn is broadly influenced by what has happened to music and guitar-based music. And I think there's a real logic to that if you think about it. In the past, most of the innovation in guitar design has been driven by artists themselves, famous guitar players, as solutions to the issues that they've had while performing on stage. So if you think about things like Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstrat, Steve Vai's Gem, even the invention of the Floyd Rose, as much as I'm not a keen fan of that particular style of trem, that came about as a particular solution to a problem that guitarists were finding when they were performing. And that was in terms of tuning stability whilst using a tremolo arm. And most of these things came about when guitar music, rock music, was almost kind of at its peak, really, in terms of mainstream cultural influence and popularity. And these players were huge, okay, back in the day. I mean, Steve Vai is still massive, EVH as well. But back in the 80s and early 90s, they were at the top of their game. They were admired by millions and millions of people, and a lot of the guitar buying public wanted to be like their heroes. So it was a fairly safe bet for guitar makers and guitar manufacturers that if they built and designed guitars that solved the needs of these players, because so many people were trying to emulate these guys, they knew that those guitars would also sell. They would be commercially successful. So that's what happened. And hence why those types of guitars are still very popular now. The way things have gone in recent years in music, really, guitar-based music, rock music, is kind of dead. This is a whole other topic, and I've talked about it in other videos on my channel. But it's just a fact. It's just the way it is. And so you're not going to see a lot of popular mainstream artists wanting to have different kinds of guitars because they're not doing anything kind of new or different musically. These guys, Van Halen, Steve Vai, Yngwie Malmsteen, they were playing the guitar in a completely different way than anyone had done before them. And therefore, they were coming up with ways to make that easier and better with their instruments. But we're not going to get that today because there are no huge mainstream artists that primarily use an electric guitar or use it in a new and different way. And that's why we're not going to get anything like a Gem or an EVH Frankenstrat now. The types of guitars that we do see that are new and different on the market are mainly things like 7 or 8 string guitars or even multi-scale guitars, headless guitars. And those have come out of the metal genre, which is a genre of music that actually is still thriving. And therefore, because they are breaking new ground and doing different styles of guitar playing, that's where the more modern guitars are coming from. But because that is actually still quite a niche type of music, then most companies are not going to start bringing out 7, 8 string headless guitars because that's not where the volume of sales are going to come from. And that kind of leads into another point really, which is just the general economic situation that we find ourselves in currently. Guitars are a luxury item. They're a non-essential. And we know that in consumer markets worldwide, the sales of non-essential goods have been falling just generally due to recessions, crises of living standards. It's just happening worldwide. And so even the big guitar manufacturers are feeling the pinch. They can't afford to take risks. They're going to continue making products that they know are popular, that they know people will buy. None of them are awash with cash. Even Fender, even Gibson, especially now with the issue of things like tariffs in the US. So we're going to see even less risk-taking, I think, going forwards. The last time we had any real kind of innovation, I think, was probably the mid to late 90s, early 2000s, when you had things like the Line 6 Variacs and Parker Fly guitars, two different types of innovation. One that was more about the kind of digital modelling technology that was becoming more popular in the 90s. And the other one more based around kind of thinking outside the box, not only in terms of kind of body shape and things, but in terms of the materials that you could make a guitar out of, the Parker Fly being solid carbon fibre, neck and body. Now, I think there are a bunch of reasons why both of those things ultimately failed. And I think the Line 6 Variacs particularly, you know, that was a solution looking for a problem, right? Because if you know anything about guitar enthusiasts, you know that one of the things that they like doing is buying guitars. If the product that you're coming out with is a guitar that can model absolutely any guitar that had ever been invented in the world, what you're doing there is you're removing the need for anyone to buy any other guitar. You will just have that one guitar, and sure, you can produce any sound of any guitar that you wish to have. But that isn't what we want. People don't want that. They like to have different guitars. They like to own and buy and play different types of guitars. And if I've learned anything from doing this channel and previous videos and the comments that I've had, it's the fact that guitar enthusiasts, guess what? They like guitars. It's never been an issue. It's never been a problem that anyone's really had to solve. And, you know, the amp is where most of the sound, tone or whatever actually comes from. And this is where we get into kind of digital and modelling technology, right? It's in the amps and the gear and the pedals and the processors. Hence the massive popularity of things like the Line 6 Helix, for example. This is where it's at now. It's in the software, it's in the processors, it's in the modelling amps. And this is what we like. This is what the guitar buying public enjoys. We like to have access to every type of guitar sound and guitar tone ever made. But we don't want to bin off all of our different guitars. We still want to have all of those. We want to be able to access the variety and flexibility in our amps and gear. And I think Line 6 learnt that the hard way. It's a little bit more complex in terms of the Parker Fly. I think that, again, that was another solution looking for a problem, because, okay, you want to make guitars more lightweight, maybe even more durable, but guitars, and this is something that Six String TV mentions, but in a different context, there's no planned obsolescence with a guitar, right? A guitar that Fender made in the 1950s will still function and still play today. They don't wear out, you know? So we don't really need to think about making it of a more durable material. Wood is pretty durable, as it turns out. Especially if you look after it and take care of it. And okay, weight might be a factor, but there are so many ways that you can take weight out of a guitar. You know, you can chamber the body, you can chamfer, you know, make cuts to it to kind of reduce the overall mass and the overall weight of it. There are many, many ways that you can do that still with using wood as the main material. You don't need to make it out of carbon fibre. And the problems that they had with things like having to glue the frets on to the neck meant that they would sometimes just come off, which is really, really not what you want when you're playing your guitar. And that's not something that's ever really going to happen with a traditional guitar fretboard made of any kind of wood. Or please let me know in the comments if any of your frets have ever fallen off, but I really, really doubt it. And I mean, it's arguable anyway about whether we actually need innovation, right, in terms of the guitar. Because as a musical instrument, it does what it does, and it does it really, really well. And it has done for the last 70 years. And I don't think we really need guitars to do any more than they're already doing. I think they have actually reached their ideal form. And you could say things like multi-scale guitars, you know, they're a kind of new innovation, and they allow much more degree of creative freedom and musical freedom, I guess. But then I would kind of say, at what point does it actually sort of cease to be a guitar? Are we getting halfway towards it being something else entirely? You know, we don't have these debates about other musical instruments, do we? Nobody's ever kind of said, I really think we need to move on in terms of the violin. Like, that's been the same for hundreds of years. We really need to make that into something different. I mean, we've got electric violins, sure, but nobody's saying that we need to change the format of the violin to bring it more up to date. Same with the piano. Yeah, we've got synthesizers. That is actually a different instrument. Nobody's arguing that we need to make the piano a different shape. I don't think musical instruments need to evolve particularly, especially in today's landscape where you can almost create any sound, any type of music that you want without any instruments at all. So there really is no need to do anything outlandish with the electric guitar. So when I think about what I consider to be innovative in today's guitar market. I think one of the huge things that's made a lot of difference to the guitar buying public, you and I, is just the quality and consistency and value that we're seeing now, particularly at the budget end of the market, right? That's something that we've never had before. That is new. When you think about the premium features that we're now getting for guitars that are broadly under the sort of £200 mark, definitely under the £500 mark, but you're getting things like locking tuners, roasted Canadian maple necks, stainless steel frets, coil tapped pickups. You're getting these features at a price point that was unthinkable maybe 15, 20 years ago. Certainly, you would not have got those things. And I think that's innovative, actually. But also, when I went to the guitar show, the UK guitar show, which Six String TV was not at, if you look at my video or any of the other videos that came out of the guitar show, you'll see a lot of different things, new and different things. And actually, I hardly saw any Strats, Tellys, Gibson style guitars. A lot of what was on offer were the smaller boutique guitar makers that were really doing their own thing, really coming up with their own designs, handmade, handcrafted guitars, super high quality, that were not just a take on a Strat, you know? Particularly things like Atkin guitars. They're always willing to go out on a limb and take a risk. And I'd really love to speak to them, actually, Atkin, if you're watching. Doing things like producing signature guitars for Justin Hawkins that are really wacky and out there. I think they know that not a lot of people are going to buy those, but they're doing it anyway. And that's creative, and that's different and fun. Anything that is going to make the experience, the playing experience, better, like having a compound radius fretboard, and having those more and more, you know, making those more common. Anything like that, I see as innovation because it brings value to you as the player, whilst not necessarily driving up the price. So I think that's kind of where it's at. And, you know, one of the areas that I think is due some innovation, really, is in terms of making guitars tailored specifically for a particular section of the market. And that's exactly what someone like Venus Guitars have come along and done, and designed guitars especially for women, for female players. So I'm still hoping that they're going to send me one to demo on the channel. I'm super excited about that and really want to get behind it. So I would say that that is innovative, that's new. It's something that I think the larger guitar makers really ought to sit up and take notice of. But anyway, those are just some of my thoughts after watching the Six String TV video. So I'll put the link to it in the description and go and check that one out. And then, yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. What do you think is the future of the guitar as an instrument? All right. Thanks, everyone.